Welcome to the first Spotlight Artist interview of our TTU MTNA newsletter December edition. Today we have the honor and the pleasure to be featuring Professor Daniel del Pino, the new Eva Brown Artist in Residence, Associate Professor of Piano at Texas Tech School of Music. Professor Daniel del Pino is one of the leading pianists of the Spanish scene nowadays. He has performed in all 5 continents with orchestras as a soloist, in chamber groups, and also solo repertoire. He often participates in international festivals, and he also adjudicates in international competitions. And he has been broadcasted all over the world. Professor Daniel del Pino, it is a great pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for giving us this interview.
Thank you very much for having me here. Thank you. My pleasure.
It is a pleasure. So as I understand, you had a pretty international beginning from the very, very beginning of your career because of your family history, right? Could you tell us a little bit?
Yes, my parents always worked abroad. My father is a journalist and my mother worked for the Spanish embassy. So I was born in Lebanon. I stayed there only for 3 years until the war really reached our neighborhood. So we had to really escape. And then I lived in Madrid for 3 years and then Morocco for 7 years. And that's where I started piano in Morocco, then went back to Spain and then continued my studies in the US. And that's about the beginnings, yeah.
How did you discover piano music and what made you decide this is going to be my profession?
Well, it was actually a strange beginning because I have to say, before I say the real beginning, at home we always heard classical music because my father is an amateur pianist and he always loved classical music. So we always had classical music on, but we didn't have an instrument at home, although he was a pianist in his youth. But one day, a good friend of mine received as a present a little, like a little toy, which was a Casioton. Maybe some people would know about this. It's a small electronic keyboard. And I was fascinated by it. And of course, I didn't relate it to the classical music I was hearing. I love to play rhythms and strange sounds. And so my father gave to me as a present the same toy. And he noticed that I was enjoying it more than normal. So I purchased a larger instrument, and which was also an electric keyboard, but very small. And I started there playing. He had scores, he brought scores, which we would listen together and try to follow on the score. So he taught me how to read. And I was attempting to play things on this electric keyboard. And then finally, they realized that I really was into it, and they got me an upright piano. And that's I think after that, it was really a love story. I couldn't stop playing. So it was clear for me. I started quite late. I mean, when I first got my piano, I was maybe 10 and a half years old. But after that, it was very clear. I wanted to make piano the reason of my life, you know.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And nowadays, you're growing and establishing yourself more and more as a performer and as a teacher. So, how do you manage the dynamics between the two roles? Could you share with us, at least for each one of them, one challenge and one strength that you consider you have?
Well, I have to admit that it's always a challenge to find a compromise between the two things, the teaching and the performing. But on the other hand, I think especially in the last, I would say 10 years, I really found that the teaching made my playing grow a lot, my performing capacity. And I believe that also the other way around works, that the performing and having a career, like a performance career, also helps my teaching. So I think both of them are very important to each other. So now I really believe that there's a big relationship between both. And I feel that thanks to many of my students, or to most of my students, I get so many learnings from them. Not only I'm supposed to teach them, but I think that I get a lot from them also as well. Because the main thing I find is when you only concentrate on performing, many times you do things without knowing why you do them. But when you have a student and you have to explain the reason why you should do something, or you advise him to do something, then you realize sometimes you lack words, the right words. And then you have to think a little harder and just try to find the right words and try to organize your thoughts. And that, of course, you can feel it when you perform. And so about the strength of one or the other, this is very difficult to say. I think it's better probably that other people speak about that than myself. I wouldn't feel comfortable with saying what are my strengths in both. I just can say that I enjoy tremendously both of them, and they contribute to each other. I think they constantly are giving support to each other. Yeah.
Well, I can see that if you really feel like you're learning when you're teaching, your students might feel very lucky and very appreciated, because that speaks a lot about yourself being humble in your teaching task. And as you said, yeah, combining both activities can be difficult because of a matter of time. So, but yeah, it is amazing, and it fits, each role seems to fit each other in a very powerful way. About Texas Tech University. So you're joining our School of Music. We are all very excited and grateful and happy about that. What made you decide to join Texas Tech, and how do you envision yourself in the institution?
Well, the main reason, I mean, there are many reasons, of course, many. The main reason was when I saw the position that was offered, that allowed, not only allowed, but encouraged to have both sides of the teaching and the performing, as we were just discussing. This was for me like a huge thing, because usually in Spain, it has many times be a problem for performers to teach, because many times conservatories even don't allow performing outside their conservatories. Sometimes it's even by state rules that you are not allowed, you're not supposed to be performing. You already have your duties as a teacher and you cannot perform. So this was definitely one of the biggest reasons when I saw that like a position was open that was looking for both an artist, a performer, and a teacher. That for me was unbelievable. The second reason was, of course, when I saw the faculty, I investigated also about the faculty that was there. And of course, I not only read the resumes, but nowadays it's so easy to Google and to check videos, and many musicians, really great top players, top teachers. And so that really, to be in such an environment is really, I think, not only exciting, but it really makes you grow as an artist and as a teacher, to be surrounded by people like of such level, no? And of course, when I did my visit in Texas Tech, also when I did my audition, the last thing, this of course I couldn't know before I was there, but the good atmosphere that I felt from both the faculty and the students was really very welcoming. And this also is such an important thing when you're going to work in a place, to find that there's a good atmosphere. And the few students I had the chance to meet were really great students, also of a very high level and very enthusiastic about learning and very open. This is so important quality in a student, to be just open and willing to learn, eager to learn. This for me were the main reasons to apply and to be. I am really feel honored and lucky to have gotten that position. I won't hide that it has been a strange start because of the pandemic.
Because of the pandemic, I know, teaching online. Right now you are teaching online.
Yes, I'm still in Spain. I mean, we were so much looking forward, the whole family, to move to Lubbock and to just move with my two kids, my wife. And of course, we now have to wait, but that's how things are. So, but I feel, in a way, everybody has made me feel like I'm there. So I feel very happy in that sense.
That is amazing. I'm so glad that you are mentioning all these things, you're feeling all these things from the very beginning, because both students and teachers and faculty, everyone that is a member of Texas Tech University agrees with the fact that it's a university that is very welcoming, and it has a wonderful combination of excellence and humility and openness. And that makes it so wonderful. And we're so happy that you are already enjoying that atmosphere. About your teaching philosophy, the core of your teaching philosophy, if you have to explain it briefly, how would you describe it?
Okay, the first thing about the teaching philosophy, every time I have to talk about teaching philosophy, I always like to make a point about the individuality of every single student. So I think it's very difficult to have one, let's say, one teaching philosophy. So basically, the general philosophy would be every single student is different and needs different approach. So this is the main thing to me about my teaching philosophy, is to try to understand what makes every student special, what they're good at, what they're very good at, and to also obviously observe their little lack of something. But I always try to put the emphasis on what is special about them and what is great about them. Many times I feel we teach always concentrating on what is wrong and try to correct it. And of course, I believe we have to correct what things that can be improved. But at the end, I think it's much more efficient to concentrate on the things that they do good, to do even better, and to showcase exactly what they're very good at. So to me, to try to capture the essence of every student is the most important element, because I think from there you can really build, to try to build that person also in security, to feel confident. If they discover that's what they really do well, they can really, show that constantly on the public. And then, of course, on a technical level, I believe one of the most important aspects of a teacher is to try to give as many tools for the student to just be able to use. But I believe the teacher should not interfere too much in their own wishes of the student, of a path, their own path. I think the teacher should be there to suggest different paths, to open their minds, open their ears, try to make them feel curious, to investigate, to discover, because maybe they're going one path and they haven't tried another path, and the other path actually they feel more comfortable with that. And so I believe it's all a mixture of both things, to really know what the student is about, and also to give them as many possible tools and possibilities so that they can explore. To me, curiosity and the eagerness to learn and to try new things is so important. So that would, if I would say that's the general philosophy, it's very difficult to get into details, because I believe again that every single student is different, and every single student has different needs, not only technically, but also as a human being. Some students are very confident and they don't need so much your support in that sense, and they need maybe more advices on another level. Some students, you can feel that the main thing is they need to feel confident about with themselves, and so you can orient that direction. So in general, that's what I would say, that it's not one teaching philosophy, it's many different philosophies, no?
Yeah, but as you were saying, it's like, it sounds like your teaching philosophy is embracing the personal perspective, the personal individual perspective of each student, embracing their own individuality. And if we think about piano being the only instrument that has that capacity to perform as a solo instrument, a long concert being so amazing and so varied, it totally makes sense that to embrace the individuality of each student is crucial in each instrument, in every instrument, but piano maybe more.
And if I may add, I think in the last years, I mean, in the last, I would say maybe 30 years, we tend to try to standardize everyone and make everyone play the same way and to be correct. And I believe, you know, like the old pianists and the old musicians, they didn't have so much YouTube or so many recordings, so they played the way they wanted. And I feel it's so much more interesting. You know, I feel you can really hear the person. I want to hear the person. I don't need to hear other things. I just want to hear that person. That I want to feel that they have the enough tools to transmit what they're feeling, you know, and how they are interpreting the music. And of course, I don't mean to be unfaithful to the text or anything like that. But I think text is there as a base. But then we need to create. We are creators. We are not only an intermediate passage of the music. We also are creating.
So this, you're saying that this standardized vision of perfection in piano performance is kind of dehumanizing the performance, right? Because it's like, it sounds like a perfect performance that could be created by, I don't know, I don't want to say a robot, but if it has no individual traits, it's hard to perceive the personal touch.
Definitely. And I think in that sense, recordings, and especially nowadays, YouTube has made a big damage in this, in one sense, because I've had this experience with many of my students. They watch videos and they are not only concerned that they are not at that level, but also even sometimes their appearance is not as great as who they're watching.
Oh, I see.
And I think it's so dangerous because, of course, many times one forgets, of course, first of all, they're comparing themselves to the top 10 of the world. And then also those top 10, they will not release a recording where they missed or where they, you know, they play maybe 100 concerts a year. They post on YouTube the one that was great. So sometimes I always encourage students to go to live concerts, because in live concerts, of course, we are human, and I think it's great to have a human feeling. And the greatest musicians make mistakes, and they're human, and that makes them even more interesting because we hear them as human beings. And now with the recordings, everyone wants to be too perfect. You know, even I can tell you a little stories. Many times when I played concerts, they recorded. And they always ask for permission, can we broadcast this? And at the beginning, I was many times saying, no, please don't broadcast this because I missed here, I did that, or I did this. And at the end, I realized, I thought, who am I trying to be fake? I mean, who am I hiding from? This is me playing. I did a mistake. It's great, you know, that's my playing. That's me. Sometimes I make mistakes. There's nothing to be ashamed of it. And who am I trying to create an image that is false? And so I decided many years ago that whenever they ask me, can we broadcast this? I say yes, because that's how I played. It was the moment.
You're touching an amazing topic there, because what you're saying is that when we force ourselves to pretend an image of perfection, it's kind of dishonest. Because the reality of what humans are, so we're pretending to be something we are not. And that's pretty strong.
Totally, I totally agree, yes.
And this relates with the next questions that I want to ask you, which is related to how do you help your students to build self-esteem and confidence? And I can guess that it's related to tell them, be yourself, no? But I will let you answer that. How do you help them to build that self-esteem and confidence that is going to lead them to be autonomous musicians and independent in the future?
Well, the first thing I always try for them is to be, don't take me wrong with this word, realistic.
Okay.
To be faithful to themselves, to know who they are, what they can do, and not try to have standards that, I mean, it's great to admire Polini, it's great to admire Martha Argerich, but there are 3 of them in the world. There are not that many. And the second thing I always try to tell them is one has to be, and this I can speak as a father now of two young boys, this changed my life in the sense of learning what is important and what is not so important. So when you're performing, many times we are so much concentrating on what we did wrong, and we forget that was what is important is what we transmit to others. And many people, sometimes they play in a competition, they come back to me and they say, you know, I played well, but I missed one note here, so I think I'm eliminated. And I said, sorry, I mean, in competitions, the judges are listening to you, not if you play one mistake. They can still hear you. And this is the most important message you have to transmit, to hear, to play how you are. Don't try to be obsessed with missing one note or two or forgetting one passage. This is so irrelevant. I've been in many concerts where the performer played some mistakes, and it was an amazing performance that I will never forget in my life. And of course, I enjoyed. I was not paying attention to the mistakes. Of course, I'm a musician. I hear them, but that doesn't mean they interrupt my pleasure of listening. And I've been to many performances where there were no mistakes, and next day I forgot completely about who played or what they played. I was not interested. So I think this is one very important aspect, just to be yourself, as you anticipated that I was going to. And the other thing I always say to my students, this is something that my former teacher, Mr. Achucarro, told me, and I think it was to me, it helped me a lot. He said, Daniel, we are not surgeons. You know, if a surgeon makes a mistake, there's a life that can be lost. If we make a mistake, there's no big deal. I mean, life continues, and the concert can be as enjoyable as it's nothing. So we should really look forward to what is important in life. And I think that helps many times feel more confident, because at the end, you just have to be sincere. Just be yourself. Just let it come out.
What an amazing way of saying that being ourselves builds our autonomy and self-confidence. We don't try to be someone else to build our confidence. And I am thinking that from what you're saying, we musicians have a pretty safe profession compared with others. We go through other risks as professionally, financially, sometimes, and emotionally. But we have to enjoy the fact that we are making music and it is enriching our hearts and our souls. And at the same time, it is not impacting others' lives in a dangerous way. So we should be aware of that. And that helps us a lot to enjoy more what we do.
Yeah. And at the end, I think not only, we can take many examples, not only a surgeon, even a airplane pilots, you know, many lives in his hands, you know, and even when you drive a car, in a way, you are risking more. So, and then we are afraid to go on stage and perform. I think a big part has to do of how things are presented since childhood, because we are not presented as the performance has been an enjoyable moment. We are presented as, oh, now you will face the audience, you have to be ready, you have to. Well, I think should be an enjoyable moment for yourself. And if it is for yourself, it will be for others usually. If you're enjoying, most of the time the others will enjoy too. And so sometimes fear is, I mean, should not be there, because I know sometimes it's easier to say than to. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm afraid of performing sometimes also. I mean, it's I don't know. I think it's also a part of accepting certain things. I mean,
Exactly.
that you're a little bit nervous before going on stage. Yeah, that's normal. No problem with that. I mean, that's life. It's not a big deal as long as it doesn't affect you too much. It should be fine.
And you're mentioning things that describe pretty well more of what your teaching philosophy is, because you said many times the word enjoyment. So it has to be about enjoyment. And you also mentioned that sometimes from childhood, the education can be towards the idea of you go and face the audience, like the audience against the performer against the audience. And it should be different, a bridge. It should be a connection, not one against the other, but one for the other. That's what you're saying. And that's very important, I think, to establish from the very beginning music learning processes to establish that idea, and the students will be helping them to be free from fear, if we think that way. And the question also relates with the following one, which is the classical musicians and the relationship that they have with society. How do you see nowadays? I know we have in the middle of a pandemic, so everything is different, upside down in many ways, but in general, in these post-modern times that we're living, if we may describe them that way, how do you see the relationship between classical musicians, profession, and society? And do you think there is a way for classical musicians to positively affect change within society? And how would that be?
Well, let me start with a little example and a little story of what I experienced here in Spain, and maybe that illustrates a little bit what I want to say. You know, I live in a small little village near Madrid. I mean, near Madrid, about 50 miles away from Madrid, in the countryside. So it's a population of maybe 15,000 people. So it's relatively small, where classical music had no space at all. There was no interest in classical music. And I remember 10 years ago, I decided to start a series of concerts here in Guadarrama, in my hometown. And I remember also the ticket prices were quite high for what they were used to, because here in Spain, usually culture is expected to be either free or very cheap. And so I decided, since I was not getting lots of help from any institution, I decided to have a higher price. The first year we had 9 subscribers, among which there were 7 members of my family, probably my mother, my father. I mean, it was really a familiar thing. And we had maybe an average of 30 people showing up in concerts. The second year we had 90 people average. The third year we were about 160. Mm-hmm. And the last years we were about full house, which it's not a big hall, it's 250. And the reason for it, what was the reason? I think the main reason is we were close to people. It was a small place. We always had the musicians speak, talk to the audience, because with classical music, there's a fear, at least in Spain. People that don't know about classical music, they're afraid to go to a classical concert because they feel they don't understand, they don't know. And so they're afraid to be clumsy or not know what to do. And so we tried in our concerts to make everybody feel comfortable. You don't need to know many things. You just go and enjoy. Everybody will enjoy at a different level. Some people know more, some people have better trained ears. There will be some musicians in the audience, but at the end we try to make something really close to the audience. The audience was sitting very near the artists. The audience could speak with the artist after the performance, and this casual feeling made people feel comfortable. But I think one important thing, because it's happening on the other direction also, in Spain many times they are trying to vulgarize the concerts and make it something very simple for the big audience. And I believe this is, at the end, will be it will go against us in a way, because we are perverting the classical music. What I tried to do is just to explain to people what the music was about with simple things, not an analysis of the work, but just to give them hints so that they can understand better the music. And on the other hand, about society, I will give you an example also. In Valencia, that's a region in Spain, it's very famous for their bands. They have amazing brass people, amazing, really top level. For many years, the only musicians that could access European orchestras or American orchestras were musicians from Valencia in the brass. But the reason, and here is what I wanted to say, is in Valencia, playing in a band is like being in a soccer team. It's a game for kids to make fun, to enjoy, to play, to go after school. They go there, they feel they're part of a group, they feel their colleagues with their peers, and they just have fun. Sometimes we try to think classical music as something very elevated that we can only do to reach a certain, and we forget that it can help many people. Those people that are playing in the band or that they are playing soccer, they can be out from alcohol instead, you know, or out from dangerous activities in their youth. And teenagers, you know, that's such an important way. If they find the enjoyment of playing in a group, it's like playing soccer or playing any sport. You know, it gives you many ethics for your life. It gives discipline. It gives many amazing things that can help in your life and that can give a reason for you to just continue in the right path.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you probably heard also in Venezuela about this important, yeah, the sistema. This, I mean, it has saved so many people from being on the streets, you know. And so I believe that music is also an amazing tool for society that we should not forget. You know, sometimes we forget about that.
Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking how much it relates with ourselves, musicians, enjoying what we do. If instead of thinking, oh, I missed a note, or I wasn't enough expressive, or I didn't look that well, instead of thinking that, we would think, no, but I'm helping society. I'm fostering a sense of collective enjoyment. I'm being part of something greater. If we would focus on that, we would enjoy more. So I'm thinking maybe the relationship between the music profession and society should be something that we should talk more in our pedagogy classes or lessons. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that would be a great thing to do. I think so. I think one of the most magical things about music, if you compare to other arts, is that it's so abstract in a sense that people join to go into a concert. They share the space, they are sharing the music, but each one is with themselves, just thinking, enjoying the music, and just freeing themselves for a little bit. And I've heard that from so many people that came for some reason, something bad had happened to them or to their family. They came to the concert with a feeling of sadness. And after the concert, they were, you know, in a way, they were healed, you know, in a sense, because their brain for a moment was just breathing beauty and just being clean from any material thoughts, you know.
What a beautiful way of ending this interview, Professor Del Pino. Music heals. Music can be a healing power. I totally agree with that. Well, I have no words to express how grateful we are with you because of giving this interview. And we are so grateful that you joined Texas Tech School of Music. We can see how much you are going to bring to our community. So thanks again for this interview. And we're wishing you the best. And
Thank you very much. Thank you. My pleasure.
you're welcome.